Hello and welcome and happy Halloween. My name is Nick, and on this episode of Beyond the Box, we're going to take a look at one of the best games to play during Halloween, Fury of Dracula. On the last episode, we took a look at Dark Souls, the board game. One I think is really fun to play, especially during this type of year when the days are shorter and the nights are longer. If you disagree with me, I guess that's okay. But this one right here, I will not accept a disagreement with. Fury of Dracula is one of the best, if not the best game to play during Halloween, which today is Halloween. So let's take a look at Fury of Dracula right now. Right, so here is the board that you play Fury of Dracula on. You can see it takes up almost the entirety of my table that I use for demoing games. So I'm gonna have to zoom in even further so you can get a better look at what takes place in this board game. Fury of Dracula is a game for 2 to 5 players. You'll always have one person taking control of Dracula, and then everyone remaining will take control of all 4 of these vampire hunters. So that means if you're playing with just 2 total players, one person is Dracula, the other person takes control of all 4 of these vampire hunters. So on the player cards, there are special abilities that the hunters have, as well as a really helpful turn sequence. So if you're not sure what you're supposed to do in any of the given phases, it's right there on your character sheet. The reason why it might be confusing is that there is a day and a night cycle with a dawn and a dusk thrown in for combat. Here we have the means in which you track the day and the night cycles going all the way from Monday through the week to Sunday. This track outside here is how Dracula wins. He's trying to get his influence from 0 all the way up to 13. If he can reach 13 influence points before he is killed, he wins. Otherwise, the vampire hunters are successful in killing Dracula, therefore winning the game. Now, if you make it all the way through the week and back into Monday, what you'll do is you'll put one of these despair tokens out, and what that is for is to add more influence points when Dracula kills off hunters. And there's a couple other things in the rules that you should read through, but suffice to say, if you're the hunters, you're trying to get Dracula killed off as quick as possible so he's not racking up all of these influence points to 13 to win the game. So now that we know what the victory conditions are, let's go ahead and discuss how you can actually achieve them. If you are playing as the vampire hunters, during the day phases, you can move. Now you can take these red lines here, which are roads, these yellow lines, which are railroads, or you can move from seaports to other seaports. One important thing to remember if you're moving by sea, if you're in a port, you can move to an adjacent sea zone, so you can go from Venice to the Adriatic Sea. However, if it's during the night, you can't move. You're stuck where you're at. And if it's during the day and you're in a sea zone, you have to move. So you can't just sit here turn after turn after turn. When it's your turn and it's day phase, you'll have to move off of the zone, and you can see these little zone lines here show the different seas that are on the map. So just keep that in mind when you're moving through the sea. Now, if you don't want to or don't need to move, you can reserve a ticket. And what the ticket will do is allow you to travel on railroads. So you'll randomly get a ticket and it'll have numbers on here. So what this is telling you is that you can move 2 spaces on a white railroad and 1 space on a yellow railroad. So if I have this ticket, I can travel from Genoa to Venice by using my ticket. Now, it obviously wouldn't make a lot of sense because there's a road that connects the 2 cities, but just for example, that's how trains work. Another action you can perform is if you have taken damage throughout the game, you can rest at a city and recover 1 of your hit points. Another action you can take is to search, and you'll reveal and resolve encounter cards in the city you're at. Now, it's a little bit more complicated, so we'll go over those in just a moment. Another choice you can take is to do a special action. So if we go back to your character card, there are special actions on them that you could take. You could also use an item card or an event card that you have during the special action phase as well. Another choice you have is the supply action. So this is the item deck, and this is the event deck. Now, if you're in a large city like Milan or Genoa, you get to draw a item card and a card from the event deck. If you're in a smaller city, like you can see the symbol for Florence here, or over here Sarajevo, you'll only take 1 card from the event deck. An important rule to remember is if you're doing it during the day, you'll take the top card off of the decks here, depending on what city you're in. If it's during the night, when you draw the event card, you'll take it from the bottom. Now that's really important because you can see here, this little symbol, it's a bat with a skull. If you draw that card during the day, it's fine, you just take it and set it off to the side. If you draw it during the night, however, you'll take this card and you'll hand it, without looking at it, to Dracula. And there are important things that Dracula can do, attacks and ambushes and all sorts of really scary stuff that he can set up for you. So you want to make sure when you're drawing cards at night from the event deck that you're not going to be drawing cards to supply Dracula with special actions. One important thing to remember on your character sheet, when you're drawing cards, you have a hand limit. Van Helsing, Mina Harker, and Lord Goldeming can all carry up to a maximum of 3 cards. John Seward's the only one different. He actually has a spot for a 4th card. So just keep that in mind when you're drawing. You may have to discard if you're taking on more cards than you have space on your character sheet for it. The last thing that you can do is if you are in the same city as another hunter, you guys can trade item cards. You could go ahead and discuss things in secret. You can say, look, I have this steak, I have this garlic. Let's go ahead and try to get to Berlin because I think Dracula's there. However, if you were even just a couple cities away, let's say you have one character in Vienna, the other is in Zagreb, you have to announce to the table if you want to share any cards or information what's going on. So you kind of have to say, hey, I think Dracula's in Berlin, we should go there. Dracula's going to know that you said that because you said it so loudly. He'll know that if you have a gun or a stake or if you have special cards. So it makes it really, really fun that this character, Dracula, is so all-powerful and knows everything. So just keep that in mind when you're playing as a hunter. You want to be secretive when you're on the same space, and that is the only time that you really want to share information, unless maybe you're trying to throw Dracula off your trail and say, hey, I think he's in Paris, when you know dang well that he's in Cologne. So that wraps up the actions that the hunters can take. I want to now explain what Dracula does and how he can move around the board, because again, this is a hidden movement game, so you're not going to be moving his miniature around different places as he's trying to go collect influence. We're over on Dracula's side of the board, and he has 2 really important decks. He has these location cards, which are all of the cities, and in the blue ones, all of the sea zones on the board. He also has these encounter cards. Now these cards are horrible, horrible things that he can do to the vampire hunters. There are wolves, vampires, ambushes, all sorts of things to either slow the hunters down, kill them off, or rack up influence points. How Dracula moves is he'll take one of the cards that he wants to move to and put it on the track, and then play an encounter card on top of it. On his following turn, he'll move the cards up and play another location and another encounter card. Play will continue this way until these cards come off of the track completely, and you can utilize these, what they call mature effects on the card. So this vampire here will give Dracula 4 influence if he gets it to slide all the way off the board. So let's say that Dracula currently is in Bucharest, and that's the card right here. You don't put the miniature out, we're just doing this for examples, but let's say there's a hunter over in Varna. And let's say Dracula came from Varna down to Sofia up to Bucharest. So Bucharest, Sofia, and Varna. Dracula say, yes, I was there a couple of turns ago, and he turns over the location card that shows that that's where he was at. He has 2 choices to make. He can play this encounter card and do the text that's in white, or he can keep it face down because he wants this card to eventually come off the map and gain the 4 influence points that's on the bottom on the matured effect. So now that the vampire hunter knows that he's just 2 cities away from where he's currently at, what he has to do is track where Dracula could be, because Dracula has a few movement restrictions. He can only travel via the red lines, which again are roads. He cannot go through railroads, and if he goes into sea zones, he takes 2 damage for moving onto the sea zone and 1 damage for each additional sea zone he moves through. Also, because sea zones are in blue, it's really obvious when Dracula plays, let's say, this card with the encounter, it's obvious he moved to a sea zone, so characters are going to be looking for ports to try to find out where Dracula could be. So now that we know how Dracula and the hunters can move, let's go into what happens if you get into combat. If you end up in the same city as Dracula, you will then fight him. In combat, the hunters will take their 3 basic combat cards. You have a dodge, a punch, and an escape, and there's little symbols on the sides here that you have to look out for, because Dracula also has different combat cards he can use with symbols as well that they match these cards. And what happens
is if you're the hunter, you'll take these item cards or any other weapons or any cards you have, and you'll put one out face down. Dracula will take one from his deck and put it face down, and then you'll flip them over. And what happens is if the symbols on the card match, Dracula's ability is canceled off, and whatever text is on the Vampire Hunter's card takes effect. However, this one, you can see there's cards in this corner. There is Fang, Fist, and a hand. So what Dracula gets to do is all of the text on his card instead. Now it can be really hairy if there is a second or third Vampire Hunter attacking Dracula, because what happens is all of the hunters will put their item cards face down that they wish to use. Dracula put his one combat card down. And what Dracula will then do is select, let's say he's fighting these two, he'll select which one of these two item cards he wants to use against his card. So let's say it's this one. And look, there are the cards here. There aren't any card symbols on this, so this card takes effect. However, the other card takes effect no matter what. So if you have 2, 3, or even all 4 of the hunters on the same space as Dracula, you can all do a lot of damage to him, and that is a really, really great way to kill off Dracula and win the game. So what happens if you're fighting Dracula, and let's say he's victorious and gives you more damage than you have hit points? What will happen is your character will then go to a hospital space, and there are these spaces right here. There's only a couple on the board. Dracula will pick the one that is, if they're both within the same distance, he gets to decide which one you go to, so that's kind of annoying if you're a hunter. But you'll go on to the hospital space. You will then wipe your character mat, so all of the damage, all the cards you have will then leave, go back off of the game board, and then on your following turn, the only thing that you can do is move back onto the city that the hospital is connected to. You'll have to wait for another turn then before you can move on roads or on railroads or do any of the normal actions in the game. So getting killed as a hunter can be very, very bad and slow you down immensely. So that's pretty much the overview of the base level game. Again, there is an advanced version in the rulebooks, which I highly recommend that you learn once you get the game down. So play through maybe once or twice on the basic level, then go on to advanced. That's the real Fury of Dracula board game. There's so much more involved in that. It's a lot of fun. There is a rules reference that's included that's really helpful, so keep referring to that as you're going through your first couple of playthroughs. But that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and wrap up, and I'll give you my final thoughts here on Fury of Dracula.
It says on the box it's a game of deduction and gothic horror, and I think it really does do a good job of giving you just that. I've played through a couple of times, both as Dracula and as the Hunters, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. There is one downside to it. Sometimes Dracula is either really good or the Hunters just can't seem to locate anything as far as where Dracula's been. And so it can be kind of boring as you're moving around 2 and 3 turns. Dracula's racking up influence points and you're just like, we don't know where he's at. We can't find any city he's been in recently. And those games do happen. There are board games that I've played before where I've had a blast and then the next time it's not as fun as last time. What happened? But I don't want to scare you off into thinking that, you know, it's kind of a hit or miss game. It can happen. I just wanted to put that out there so you're aware. If you're going through a game that's not super fun, just change it up, mix it up, try something different, get the Hunters together and you know, just try a different strategy and see if there's a way where you can locate him on that. And if it's boring for Dracula, then you're doing your job because you don't want to get caught. You want to set up all the traps and ambushes that you can to get your influence points up to 13 as quickly as possible. But all in all, a great game. Like I said, it's perfect to play on Halloween, and I hope you guys agree. That is all the time that I have on this episode. Thank you so much for watching. For Beyond the Box, my name is Nick. Have a great rest of your evening.